What is going on, everyone? It's me, Troy, and I'm here to talk about a book that I finished reading recently. It was recently as another day ago. I don't know, whatever the point this is uploaded. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that the book is actually Towers of Midnight by Robert Jordan / Brandon Sanderson. This is the penultimate entry within the Wheel of Time series as book number 13. And I gotta say, for all of the fuss, must, and don't trust and dare programs and things of that nature are what is usually characterized or dubbed as the slog within the series. Those books that are Jordan's original designs for his work expressed. I gotta say that The Towers of Midnight was probably my least favorite book within the series. I know I did a video sharing my thoughts and commentary on my experience reading Crossroads of Twilight, which is book number 10, and that's the book that's often in the Wheel of Time series regarded as everyone's least favorite, the most unpopular. I loved that book or enjoyed it enough, but Towers of Midnight is my least favorite. Unfortunately, you would think that I've heard so many amazing things about the last 3 entries within the series, and I was excited about Towers of Midnight, but it was a begrudging experience, or it was laborious to get through. But what I will say is that I'm happy that the series is about to end. And after 500 pages, that was probably the singular most alarming thought in my head that was screaming with desperation, was that I wish this would hurry up and end. I'm ready to just end it all. I'm ready for it to go. There's one thought that comes to mind when I share this, my displeasure at reading Towers of Midnight. Not that it was a terrible book or anything, but it just didn't resonate well with me, is that there's this general thought or criticism that for some people it might work and some it just won't, and that had to do with the change in the writers. Brandon Sanderson wrote, I think it is, and in the previous book, in book 12, he wrote the rest of what Jordan already put down for The Gathering Storm, which, by the way, I regard as a 5-star read, which makes this experience of reading Towers of Midnight that much more frustrating, because that book was so great. So my point, if I'm reverting back to, is that Towers of Midnight was written singularly in Brandon's voice and style, with the addition of Jordan's notes as opposed to halfway through. And so with that, of course, you're going to have changes within the characters and how they're expressed. And Brandon Sanderson, for the most part, I believe he did the best that he could. Like, I couldn't do this, Sugar Honey Iced Tea, but he did what he could. And so a lot of people do complain, or what I've read in reviews after reading the book is, he didn't get Matt right, or he didn't get this character right, or whatever. And I don't want to say that was part of my frustration, is that sort of lukewarm or tepid expression of these characters that I've spent the past 12 books with, underneath mostly primarily through Jordan's gaze for his own authentic work and characters. But maybe that is what it is. The vibe was just kind of different. And one staunch difference I noticed is that, because I usually am, like I said before, reading these books and I'm just absolutely laughing out loud at the characters, because I had so much deep appreciation for Jordan's candor with his characters and his shadiness with character, his wittiness, the nuance of his characters, and the subtlety. I was just very much engrossed in a lot of Jordan's comedic moments and his humor. Towers of Midnight, I kind of noticed that was vacant. Those things weren't vacant, were very much vacant, and I think that that's primarily where the disconnect happened with me. Now, with that said, as I look and share my thoughts of each of the storylines, I think that because this book is primarily that of, the heavyweights in this book are the storylines of Perrin and Elaine. Those are 2 of my least favorite characters to traverse this world with. And so, with that being said, because they are often located in people's experience as least favorite characters as well, or not so enjoyable story threads to get through within the series, I feel like Towers of Midnight was Sanderson trying to, well, he was trying to salvage the very best that he could out of, and squeeze the very best that he could out of the character of Perrin to make up for that lacklusterness that progressed throughout the series post book 4. And the same, I would say, will be applied to Elaine, where he's trying to salvage what he could out of this character and squeeze whatever he could out of this character to the best of his ability. Unfortunately, just there was very little resonance with me in those two regards. And I have to say that for the first time, really, when I say that I finished this book, there's this spectrum of not so much finished this book as I had the unfortunate regard that I didn't care to go through each and every mundane, monotonous notion of character, thoughts, and expression, page after page after page, and directive of Elaine and Perrin, to the point where I had to skip some of their chapters. Honestly, I had to. It was me reading the first page within the chapter, seeing how much of my investment alarms were ringing, and deciding not so much. I could skim through and get just enough to keep moving forward. And so I would skim through, and then I would fully read the last page. I do not like to do that. I absolutely abhor and take umbrage with myself for having done that, especially considering I ended up getting through Crossroads of Twilight like it was nothing, which I loved, by the way. I enjoyed that book, to be honest with you. But that was terrible. I don't like that. I'm not really happy about having to do that. But unfortunately, reading those chapters featuring Elaine and Perrin, they effed with my anxiety. Like I said, this alarm kept ringing in my head. Like, I wish that this would hurry up and end. I wish that this would be over with. And another thing that I think that caused those feelings is because, as I said, book 12, The Gathering Storm, was so incredibly amazing. It was just like this. You have this high intense momentum leaving out of The Gathering Storm, and we're choosing to go through this tepid experience with in the next book, the following book, with Perrin and Elaine. But like I said, I think these were important moments. It was important to tie these moments up into as neat a bow as could be possible for Sanderson, to put some of these threads to bed, and then subsequently hope to salvage some sort of light at the end of the tunnel, or silver lining for the characters of Perrin and Elaine, because like I said before, they are a lot of people's least favorite stories to get through. I won't say characters specifically, though that is the case as well for some people, but stories to get through, they're the least favorite. And I suppose Sanderson did it. I don't know. I just couldn't take it anymore. But just to break it down a bit, the thing with Perrin is I feel like Perrin pretty much hit his peak so early on within the series. I want to say like book 4, right? Book 4. That it's almost like with Fael getting kidnapped twice, but specifically speaking of the second time, it was almost like one of those, let's give Perrin something to do. Let's give Perrin something to do, okay? Yes, there's ties to the dragon, the dragon brand, that he is, he's a functional character, pulling off some amazing feats and threads that we're going to tie up to the end. We got it. The technical portions of Perrin's storyline made sense. We got it. But the emotional investment for me as a reader was just, there wasn't any resonance for it. I feel like Perrin hit his peak early on, and for that point, post book number 4, let's give him some busy work to do. The busy work had an agenda, it had an angle, it was purposeful, but it was busy work all the same. So that's kind of where I was always at with Parent. It's really unfortunate, but doubling on top of that, it's like, why in Towers of Midnight, it's like, here we go, going through this power struggle, this, let's put him on the throne, let's judge him on the throne, let's just see if he wants to be the leader of the pack or not. This power struggle with the White Cloaks, it's like I thought we solved this books and books and books ago, but we're back at it again. And it was just like, I couldn't take it. It was like one chapter, there was the announcement, the White Cloaks got it coming, we're gonna judge Perrin for the crimes he committed 2 years ago. We're gonna finally get him to this point, even though I thought we solved that already, but we're gonna carry this on and make this an issue again. And then it skip to another chapter, and then here go another chapter. We're repeating the same thing. We're gonna put him on the throne. It's just like the itsy bitsy little steps, the little soap opera moments, and it's like, get to it, just do it. That's a slogan. Get to it, just do it. And that drove me crazy. It's like, why am I going through this rotating of chapters again and again of them talking about the same thing? And in the damn camps, I was sick of the camps. I was Perrin walking through the camp. Chapter 57, Perrin walking through the camp. It's the same with Fael. There was a chapter where Fael was walking through the camp, and then she was walking with two other ladies. I don't feel like getting Berylane and Elandria or whatever. And then the weapons attacked the camp. The essence of the Dark Lord was influencing the weapons to turn against their wielders. One thing I noticed about this series is there's oftentimes of these monotonous moments where the rise in action takes this, I don't know, it's not actually rise in action, but it's pitfall in action in a lot of cases, but it's trying to make a little blip on the line where Trollocs randomly attack a village, or something random that's mystical and fantastical ends up taking place to sort of bump up some of the action. It happens all the time. It's very strategic when you really pay attention to it. But that's beside the point. The point is that one chapter had Fael walking through the camp. This incident happened in which the weapons turned against their wielders. And then another chapter a few paces down the line happened where Fael was walking through the camp with two other women, two other people. I'm like, you gotta stop doing it. I was sick of the camps. I was tired of the camps. Done, bar none. Done with the camps. I know there's a lot of people like, oh, well, you don't understand this, you don't understand this and this and that and that. No, from an emotional investment experience for the reader, there was just no resonance. And when I compare those moments to how much I perk up when I read about Nynaeve, when I perk up when I read about Lan, when I perk up when I read about Rand, when I perk up when I read about Matt at times, that difference in enthusiasm is incredibly noticeable. And guess what? I'm not apologizing for that. I'm not. Maybe in another rereading, I will have, my mind will open up a lot further for Perrin, but at this point it's not. I really am at this point where I just kind of ready to finish the series and just get this done. But the same can be applied to Elaine's character, and I don't even want to talk about Elaine's character for real. It was kind of reflective of one another, where there's a lot of talking, there's a lot of talking of what we're gonna do, and nothing happens. Each alternate chapter, nothing takes place. I remember being frustrated early within the books where Elaine did something very once again, an Elaine move that caused other people to, of course, be collateral damage to her misguided self-interest motivations. And she ended up being carried on one of those things, sort of like picture Cleopatra, the servants carrying her. But she was at this place where she was going to observe Alondra, who is Alondra is a character who is great with fire element mechanisms, fireworks. But the point is that throughout the series, Alondra was working towards building these weapons that can shoot out fire or balls of fire. But the point is that it was obvious that she's making cannons, really cannons, and it just like I was so frustrated with Elaine observing Alondra demonstrating these cannons that I screamed in my head, because I was like, why don't they just say what they are? Stop with the whole mysticism behind it. Just say that some daggone cannons and this is what we're gonna do with them, and then let's just go do it. So with that out of the way, I do want to talk about Egwene. I'm really sad about her. I don't have many feelings about her as well. I think that one of the disappointing things with her character is that very early on within the book, Rand and her finally connected after being separated for so long, and instead of it being like a very tender moment where that they could share, which I thought was going to be incredibly important for them to both be sympathetic to where they've come from and their friendship in the past, how far they've arrived, it turned into like a power struggle thing. And I was just like really disappointed about that taking place. So I don't have any feelings for Egwene for real. I feel like Perrin and Elaine overshadowed so much, and it was so heavy-handed. Just going back to Perrin with the wolf dreams, I had to skip those chapters. They were that painful for me to get through, to sit there and settle into. That I feel like Elaine got kind of short. She got kind of, her storyline kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of her going up against Forsaken characters. But at the same time, it's like I really do just kind of want all this to hurry up and wrap up. So I'm gonna pass on going further into Egwene. But I will say that I'm so sad about Nynaeve's character. She was my favorite. It was really difficult for me to read about. I don't know. I just feel like Rand and Nynaeve and Min, which was hard at one point for me to gather her, but I feel like that they're just the crew. That's the crew, especially Nynaeve and Rand. There was a touching moment where Rand told Nynaeve early within the book that he did not want her to change who she was in accordance to being what it is that makes up an Aes Sedai, which is someone, the woman who can channel, who has a very stoic and calm and almost like an android-like disposition. He didn't want Nynaeve to change who she is as she went about for solidifying herself as an Aes Sedai per Egwene's requests. Nynaeve is a very powerful Aes Sedai, and Egwene wanted to make sure that she still, as an Amyrlin, that she still had her gaze over Nynaeve as Nynaeve traversed throughout the world, showing how powerful she is. But I liked that conversation that they had because it was touching, it was real, it was touching, and it was the same things that I was feeling about the character of Nynaeve. But it really frustrated me that they made her go through the process of being solidified as an Amyrlin, an Aes Sedai, full documentation, going through the trials. But it's like, at the same time, it's like, why are we going through this again with this character? I think that she would have been much more effective, as Rand spoke it out himself, being herself, being loose, being unleashed, being Nynaeve. Why is it that she had to go and prove herself? Why is it that she keeps constantly having to prove herself time and time again? For who? Cat Swain, girl, bye. Egwene, I was like, Egwene, no, hell no, I'm not going through no trials. I cleansed the Sidine is a sidear, the men's power. But I cleansed it, okay? I cleansed it, okay? I'm not going through this again. I'm gonna be naive. I get the politics of it, but at the same time, I was just very disappointed in that it happened. Nynaeve, as I said before, time and time again, is a character that you cannot hold back or shouldn't be held back. But it's also sad for me because she didn't really show up too much in this book because, man, Nynaeve carried so many books. Nynaeve, Mat, and Rand carried so many books. But now she's waning in her, she has her moments, but she's waning in her presence, and I don't like it. I really don't. Now, as for the character of Mat, which is, of course, another one of my favorite characters, there was some frustrations in that as well. I feel like that was trying too hard with Mat. One of the things that frustrated me the most is the taverns. Enough of the taverns. I feel like this obsession with Mat in the taverns, you know, given that this is a 3-year period within all these events happening, here we are in the final year, the final moments. There's this sense of undermining his character or the development of his character with these daggone taverns and shooting dice. Not that I'm judging shooting dice, because, you know, craps is a good thing, I guess, as long as you don't get killed doing it, right? But the point is that maybe there's just a little bit more elevation in that area that I felt like needed to catch up with his primary or overarching role within the series, which is something that we saw later at the end of Towers of Midnight when he went into a tower to rescue an old friend of ours, which is a character who was dispatched early within the series mysteriously, but rescued here in Towers of Midnight. And I want to speak on that. I guess we'll just go ahead and spoil it here. And Moraine, you know, we thought for the longest time, we learned that Moraine was captured. We thought she was dead. Then we learned she was captured. And then Mat was set forth to go and rescue her with Tom and Noel. But, you know, when Moraine was rescued, that's when my heart broke for this series. I know, this is so strange, right? That's when my heart broke. Moraine has been my favorite character from the start, next to Lan and Nynaeve. Moraine was the character who introduced me into the series. She's the woman who's been featured on, you know, the cover, who really drew me to read these books. As I said, oh, look at this woman who's going to do all this magical sorcery and all this kind of stuff by taking us on this incredible adventure. For someone who doesn't read high fantasy or fantasy much, you know, that was the ticket for me, the character of Moraine, and I just gravitated toward her almost instantaneously. I wish, although I get and I understand that she's going to play a huge pivotal role in the last book, I'm sure of it, just by looking at the cover, actually. Rescuing Moraine broke my heart because I wish that Jordan got to do it. That's the only way I can put it. I wish that this moment was still in Jordan's hands, because that's how, like I said, that's where a lot of my key investment early within the series was, and that was the character I was so drawn to, who had me hooked, line, and sinker into reading The Wheel of Time. You know, I read the prequel before I read The Eye of the World, and Moraine was just my girl. So yeah, it broke my heart. You know, I couldn't look at it as a tender moment or anything like that of her being rescued. To me, it was, I wish that she was past. That's that's all. I wish that she was past, and we could extrapolate the reflection of that of her passing into the characters, into the surrounding characters, you know, how they would express knowing that, or understanding that this is what happened to this very pivotal and keystone character, which we never really got to process and grieve throughout the series, or see through our characters really, which is kind of okay because of, you know, the how they met. There, it was very short term, and it wasn't like on this, it was borderline a maternal a connection with the characters in Moraine, but not totally. But the point is that still, I don't know. I just, there's no other way for me to put it other than I wish that that moment was completely and utterly in Jordan's hands. Not that Sanderson did bad or anything, but just, that's just the only way I know how to put it. You know, some people may feel like some people feel like Matt should have, you know, they wish Matt would have remained in Jordan's hands. You know, for me personally, it's just, it's Moraine. But I kind of wish that she just didn't come back, because it's just like, it's coming back to this whole different vibe than the Moraine that we knew previous. So that's just from a Moraine fan, I guess. Not to be confused with lemon meringue pie. Ooh, I could take one of those right now. So anyway, that is kind of what I'm leaving Towers of Midnight feeling. Ultimately, I'm ready for it to end. I'm ready for it to end. I cannot believe that it took me, that this is the book that I disliked the most. It was just tiresome to get through. Just very tiresome. And that's unfortunate. And I'm having some strong trepidations about the final book being the same. So, that's it. We will see what happens.